NLP, as Gordon Young presents it at the Institute of Applied Psychology, is really backed up by work in cognitive science. And I was just so surprised to see how it resonated with the work of Daniel Kahneman, who's won a Nobel Prize for his work in cognitive psychology. I really think that strategic psychotherapy and the other things that the Institute of Applied Psychology do is really at the cutting edge of allowing people to reach their full potential, whether that be overcoming what a psychotherapist would call a mental health issue, or whether it's excelling in your career or as a performer or whatever it is you do. It's about being the best that you can be.
I've been lucky enough to have been involved in many different types of training courses over my life. For me, Gordon is absolutely top of his game, though, not just within Australia, but globally.
I believe communication has improved here at Fox by Gordon coming in and doing his programs. Gordon sort of does a deep dive into the business and really understands the mechanics of how an organisation works. And then he tailors his approach around that organisation, which I think is very different to others.
Specifically, I think what Gordon can bring is some really great insights into leadership. What makes a great leader? What makes you trusted as a leader? The course that I did with Gordon has absolutely helped me be a better leader, and it's helped, I think, some of the people that I've worked with become better leaders themselves.
I think that Gordon and his team help you to break down the barriers of communication that frequently exist within organisations in a way that allows for common ground and common language and a common approach to business challenges. I would recommend this approach to really all levels within a business and really to people that genuinely want to create positive change in their lives.
Have been an athlete for many, many years. I was fortunate enough to represent Australia in my sport. I thoroughly enjoyed doing that, and that's a passion of mine. Since doing the NLP practitioner course, a year ago, I wanted to buy a property, and it's taken me a year of procrastinating. I got to the point where I found a property in an area that wasn't a desired area, but I found that property and I almost bought it. I got to the day of buying it, or putting that offer in and making it final, and I couldn't do it. I got sick. Doing the NLP practitioner, since doing that, I literally just bought a property a couple of weeks ago in an area that has been my dream, and I'm there. I did it. I did my research, I did a process, and I got there, and it's a big change for not only my life, but my children's as well. It allowed me to stop procrastinating and allowed me to take a step forward and make my life a better life. I believe that doing the NLP practitioner and the masters, as well as the strategic coaching, and then the training facilitator, combining all of those together is going to enable me to achieve something that I've wanted to do for a long time, and that is working with athletes as a mindset coach.
With Gordon initially on NLP and did the NLP practitioner course, which was incredibly eye-opening. A lot of important factors relating to communication that I've actually never considered before. You know, how people think, feel, you know, what they see, just even little things like that in relation to communication about people's perspective. And I've learned, in all honesty, about being in someone else's space rather than being my own. Clearly, as an executive, you quite often want results quickly. You want solutions, and very often I could see the solution myself. But the critical piece is actually making sure someone else sees it or feels it or thinks it. So NLP gave me a whole range of tools to actually get in that other person's space, not just to get them to do it once, but actually for them to actually manage it many, many times over. That's the biggest thing I found. And then the second thing, despite the fact I'm a strategist and I understand what planning's about, and that there is a process to planning, that to enable people to understand there's a process for everything they do, and to enable them to be engaged in that kind of communication, that kind of thought, has been something I've been able to more readily transfer across.
From the first day, I knew it was the right course to be on. It was exciting and it was very clear and precise, and I just gained so much that the time that I was here flew by. The last 3 days have flown by, and I just don't want it to end. It's really fun and enjoyable, and I feel completely safe and comfortable here, but I just know that it just feels completely right. It all makes sense. Everything that's being said, it feels like something that can be applied in real life. It doesn't just feel like there are theories out here that can't be used. It feels like, here you go, this is real, you can use this. And it's quick and effective, but it's got grounding, which is what I really like. So I'm enjoying it, I'm loving it, and personally I've been getting a lot of benefit from it already, from myself. And I know that that's what's going to take me forward as well.
Input would be that anybody who's considering to do a course should consider this company. Not only do you get exactly what they promise, but you also will get a company that really is very friendly, that goes through the content in a very user-managed way. And you can really, start to see results very quickly. And also, it's a very practical way of approaching a topic which many people think is quite American or very scary, where in fact it breaks it down to a level where you can digest it and really see the application of it in your everyday life.
The NLP course just was just phenomenal in terms of personal transformation that I needed. It changed the way that I ran a lot of negative processes. It changed the way I thought about things. It taught me strategies that I can use and teach to other people on dealing with stress or anxiety, just to be a bit more goal focused. It was nothing short of amazing, really. It really, really was, and I didn't expect it, and I think that's what ramped my perception of it up even higher, because I knew nothing about NLP. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what to expect. I was just everyone told me you'd really get a lot of benefit from doing NLP and then do clinical hypnotherapy.
The great thing about Gordon as a trainer is that he's very, he's an excellent communicator. He's a great teacher. He's very good at presenting the concepts in a really easy to understand way. The way that he structures the courses is very experiential, it's very hands-on. So you do a lot and you learn a lot by doing, which is really important for embedding the teachings. As a teacher, he's done a lot of study himself, and he's done a lot of work on himself, and he's travelled a lot and been exposed to so many different thinkers in the field and very, very highly qualified thinkers in the field. And I think because he sets that high standard for himself, the breadth and depth of his knowledge is really, it's mind-blowing. But at the same time, he's able to distill everything down to really concrete, simple concepts that we can all absorb in our own way, in our own time.
The benefits come from participating actively in all of the exercises. And, I've seen people have extraordinary personal changes, things that have held them back or limited them for years, suddenly dissolve away, in quite a quick, easy exercise.
Teaching this because he wants to be seen to be a wonderful trainer. He's teaching it because he knows that we're going to go out there and become the people that we want to be. Oh, that's how I see it. So he's trying to relay the skills that somebody has taught him to other people in society, in the world, wherever he trains. And it gives them a way of reaching the potential that we all have, but we just don't link into sometimes.
And I spent, I'd say the last 10 years in fairly intensive therapy and psychiatrists and doctors and whatnot. And I just wasn't really happy with the progress I was making, because obviously, you spend 10 years in therapy every week and you're not really getting anywhere. I wasn't getting, it totally failed me. I mean, when I came to the course, I did the NLP course first, the practitioner. I was still struggling with a few bits, and Gordon knows it was not an easy course for me. But the progress I made during those 2 weekends, 8 days, so far outstripped any progress I made in the previous 8 years. And, I have a very good team of doctors and psychologists, and, they're probably the best around, but they just don't have the tools to help you quickly and efficiently. It hasn't been back. I told my psychiatrist, and he said, look, if you can learn what Gordon does, I'll refer my patients on to you, because I see the difference in you within 2 weeks, and it's just nothing I could ever achieve with the tools I have.
The NLP course, I've basically got options of fast tracking. Right? I think what's very crucial here is about being a psychologist. I need to work with shifting people as quickly as possible. And I think nowadays there's also an expectation to sort of move people. There's an opportunity here for the betterment of basically, I know it might sound somewhat cliche, but for the betterment of mankind and all. I have a sense of people being held back from offering their absolute best, and they're coming to the realisation of their best. So I would go for anyone that's genuinely interested in people.
We've found this type of training invaluable for what we do. What we do is all about communication, and NLP is all about learning about communication, how to communicate not only with yourself, but with everyone else. And we've found this to be invaluable for what we do as a business, but also what we do in our personal lives relating to family, friends, everyone. You learn the techniques that you see someone like Tony Robbins apply, which you didn't learn there. it was just an experience and you got to watch it, but you didn't get to see behind the curtain. You didn't get to see the techniques that he uses in order to be such a brilliant communicator. Because at the end of the day, that's what we all want to be. We want to be great communicators. Beyond NLP gives you the tools, breaks it down into an understandable way in which you can practically apply those tools. And that's the advantage of this course. We came to do Beyond NLP as a couple, and we found that really helpful because at the end of the day, we get to go home, check in on each other, and if we have questions and things run through your mind, well, you know, is that correct or did I understand that properly? You can bounce off your partner because you've both been through the same experience. And we found that to be really helpful.
Yeah, and a lot of the techniques, basically we're discovering ways to communicate. And so we're discovering ways to communicate with ourselves, with our own brains and the voices that go on inside and, you know, with those feelings inside here. And so we're trying to learn how to control those and figure them out. And in doing that, we're learning better communication skills for ourselves and then with each other. So I can read more on what Dave's doing and he can read more about what I'm doing, and we know how to respond to that and how to react to it and how to help each other.
I love you.
I love it. So it's helped our relationship.
So hello and welcome everyone. This is an introduction to Neuro-Linguistic Programming. I want to thank you all for being here. Let me begin by giving you a quick overview of what we're going to do tonight so you know what the next hour or so will amount to. We're going to talk about what NLP is. There are many definitions. What effective NLP provides, what the obstacles that we generally have, and it's not what we think they are. So there'll be things that hold many of you back, but they're not what you think they are. I'm going to show you what really is going on for you tonight. Even though I don't know you, the pattern is unilateral. Why would you choose our branch of NLP? It is important to understand that there are different branches of NLP that can be taught in quite different ways. I'm influenced in a very different direction to most people or most schools. And I want to highlight the distinction because for you to make an informed decision about which school you go to, it is important to understand why you would make one choice over another. So you've got to have ways of making distinctions. And ultimately, NLP training should be the most useful, probably the best investment you ever make in yourself or your future. That's what NLP training should be, in my view. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, it doesn't end up being that. And I think you can avoid that with a little bit more knowledge. I'm going to show you how you do things like stress and how to break that down in 30 seconds. And then we'll have some sort of Q&A, assuming that I haven't answered some questions that you might be sitting there with. So hopefully I will answer most of your questions through the PowerPoint. So feel free to put things into the chat. We have other people online who can answer some of those questions for you. And any questions that don't get answered, feel free to repost them at the end and I'll see what I can do, how many of those I can get to, because we have quite a few people online. So the first thing you need to know is who am I? Otherwise, why are you sitting here listening to me? So it's really important. My name's Gordon Young. I'm the only Australian government accredited trainer to have ever been accepted into the Milton H. Erickson Foundation in Phoenix, Arizona. Milton Erickson was one of the major models for NLP. If you don't know anything about Milton Erickson, you probably should if you're looking to come to this field. He was a psychiatrist, a GP, and NLP is a modeling technique. It's a way of working out how do the most effective people on the planet do what they do. And Milton Erickson was arguably the most significant model they used in order to come up with effective techniques to facilitate change through language and through other techniques as well. I'm a published author in the field. I was also included in something called the 100 Leaders Program. That was a program that basically went through 100 different professions, and they assessed who the leader in the field would be, and then they interviewed us. It was the largest study of leadership in the Southern Hemisphere, to my knowledge. And in this field, I was the one they chose. I have been the chair of the Australian Board of Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and I've had over 16 years, it's actually coming up to 17 now, as a full-time NLP trainer. So we've been around for a long time. So first step is, what is neuro-linguistic programming and what can it do for you? Really, that's it at the end of the day. It's got to be coming back to what can it do for you? Well, you know, you can get some of these things off the net, but neuro-linguistic programming, neuro stands for your nervous system. Linguistics is the way you explain things, either externally or internally. And programming is the patterns, the autopilot behavioral and thinking patterns that you have that determine how you operate in the world. So when you drive, you have a neuro-linguistic program for that. There are certain beliefs that you run about driving. You have a certain skill set about it. Everything you do without having to consciously think about it, you have a neuro-linguistic program for it. And NLP is really about how do we optimize your programming? Just because we know how to do something doesn't mean to say we know how to do it well or efficiently. We just know how we do it. And unless you had really ideal parenting, the likelihood of you having a dominantly very, very optimized set of patterns is actually fairly low. And when those patterns aren't particularly optimized, everything takes way longer to achieve, and it becomes harder and harder to achieve your goals. Now, here's the thing. Here's my bias about NLP. Let me be very clear about it from the outset. It completely changed my life. I was a stressed out businessman. I was having panic attacks. I always had, hundreds of thousands of dollars outstanding, people owing me money. I had staff to pay. I couldn't seem to have the right people in my office. Didn't seem to matter what I do, I was up against it. And I started having panic attacks. I was always nervous. I'd even say that there were times when I was just really flat through my 30s and early 40s. And then I was introduced to a guy who did something called neuro-linguistic programming. And I had no idea about any of this stuff. I actually thought all personal development was crap. And so I was really closed off to it. I don't even recognize the person I was back then. I can think back at some of the things I did and think, what was I thinking? I am so completely changed in a good way that I have opportunities and possibilities now that were never viable. What I'm saying to you is your future is completely unpredictable. And that's not a bad thing. With COVID, a lot of people thinking the uncertainty of the future is challenging, but I'm going to say to you, if you said to me 20 years ago, American psychologists would get professional development points for listening to my recordings on my conference recordings, or that I'd be on TV as an anxiety expert or any of these things, I would have said, you are crazy. There's no way. That's not even on the radar. And yet some of these things have been happening for years. So the potential you have will never be realized if you continue with the patterns that you typically have. You're going to get more of the same. You know, your future becomes a mirror of your past typically, unless you create a shift or a change in it. And I'm going to say every single person should know NLP. Maybe not all of it exactly to the same level. I think every child should know NLP. Every teenager should know NLP, because NLP teaches you how to take control of your thoughts and your feelings. So let me give you another distinction. The pivot point of our lives is the quality of the mechanism you use to discern which thoughts and feelings you pay attention to and which ones you tend to ignore. So we have something like 50,000 thoughts a day. That's the estimate. That basically works out at 1 per second. I personally think that's a little over the top, but it's a lot no matter what it is. I don't care how intelligent you are. You know, I have a number of degrees behind me, but a fair chunk of my thoughts in a day are fairly innocuous, emotionally driven crap. That's the reality. That will be true for you too. They don't make a lot of sense outside of your brain. Outside here, if you actually utter it, you start to realize you're thinking something that just doesn't make sense. But the question is, your life is determined by which thoughts and feelings you give airtime to. So what is the mechanism you use to ensure that only thoughts and feelings that are useful, that are going to support you being effective or being kind or being empathetic or whatever else it is, how do you decide to go with those rather than fear or judgment or anger? How do you make that decision? Well, it comes back to the quality of the mechanism you use to make the decision. And if you're lucky, because of conditioning, you might have a highly effective one. But if you're not, then that will be the bane of your existence. If you've got a very critical internal dialogue and you don't know how to turn it off, your own mind, which is arguably the most sophisticated structure in the known universe, is not a friend. So you have an enemy within. And there's no reason why you should live like that. We run a particular technique that can dissolve that critical, angry, busy voice in about 5 minutes. You don't have to go 10 days of silence of Vipassana to eradicate it. You're in control of it now. But the trouble is, we're not taught how. Nobody seems to explain to us. People say you're in charge of your life, but that's not very helpful if you can't show me how I'm in charge of my life, how I'm in charge of my thoughts and my feelings. How am I meant to do it? So just telling people they should take charge isn't terribly helpful. NLP, the great thing about NLP, at least our branch of it, is that we don't just tell you that you need to be in charge. We show you how. Now, is there a person on the planet that's in charge all the time? No, we're human. However, it's about working towards being the most effective person you can be. And NLP gives you the toolkit to do that. And, you know, I think increasingly in these difficult times, this is even more important. So to give you another analogy, we're kind of like smartphones. So if I give my smartphone to my 90-year-old mother, it ceases to be a smartphone. It becomes an old analog phone because all she can do is call. She can't text. She can't retrieve messages. She certainly can't use apps. In fact, if I told her about Shazam because she loves music, I told her about Shazam and she just was incredulous. She couldn't believe that an app could do that. So her view is it can't. She doesn't look at something and say, well, I don't know how to use it, so maybe I need to review. She says the equipment can't do it. And that's kind of the same limitation we tend to run ourselves. We tend to buy into our limitations. And the truth is, we're way more effective, way more, we have so much more potential than we understand. Everyone in this meeting is good at something that you haven't even heard of yet. It hasn't even been invented yet. You're good at things now that you couldn't do 15 years ago because it didn't exist. The very fact you can use a smartphone as an example of that. There was a time in your life you couldn't walk or talk or tie your shoelaces. You hadn't even worked out at one point that you need to put on your trousers before you put on your shoes. You tried it the other way. Every child does. And you couldn't work it out because you didn't have the capacity back then. But you had the potential to do everything you do now. And that potential doesn't stop now. It also keeps going into the future. There's no telling what you could be. But unless you develop a new paradigm, a new way of looking at the world, the likelihood of many people reaching anything like their potential is fairly remote. Yeah. So NLP is all about you. Teaches you how to read others, how to communicate more effectively, how to communicate with yourself more effectively. Because as I said, the thoughts and feelings you run determine your life. Which ones you're going to listen to? So NLP takes a deep dive into you, and then you can extrapolate that similar things are happening for other people as well. So you were sent this wheel of life. It's actually a method I use for coaching to establish where someone is at the beginning of their coaching program. May I suggest, if you haven't already filled that out, maybe take some time in the next day or so to look at it. Now, you might see that this wheel's a bit different from most. I make distinctions between your immediate family and your intimate relationship. So in the area of relationships, which usually clump together, you could be good with your family of origin, but you may not have an intimate relationship. So there's a distinction there. I also separate finances and career and business. You could have a great job and look like you're doing very well, but you're living beyond your means. Therefore, your finances are really poor. And so it's easy to hide gaps when there's fewer segments. So take a look at that and be honest with yourself. It really works well when you put it like a yellow highlighter and you physically and visually draw out where you are in the world. And then you ask yourself, if the self, the central circle, was a hub of a wheel on your car, how well would this wheel that you have, how well would it travel? How well would it do under load? What is important is that we take stock from time to time and look at where we are. And then you can decide if you need to go somewhere else. So one of the key components of NLP is perception is projection. Now, it predates NLP, to be fair, but in essence, we have, say, like 2 million bits of information come streaming through our nervous system every second. How could that be? It sounds like a lot. I thought that too. But when you consider that you have to process virtually millions of colors all around you, depth of color, air temperature, air quality, spatial awareness, there are millions of tiny bits of information you're putting together fairly effortlessly. And you decide what you pay attention to through your filter. Your filter determines what you see. An optimist sees possibilities. A pessimist sees problems. whenever you're going into the future, by definition, you're making things up. So one's not more realistic than the other, but generally optimists live longer, are more affluent, recover better from accident and injury. They just do better in life because they're not catastrophizing everything. A pessimist will often say, well, I'm going to be right eventually, and you will be, but so will the optimist. So out of all this information coming in, you can only take on board a certain percentage consciously. This is known as the theory of chunking, and it predates NLP. 1956, George Miller, basically saying you tend to look out for things that you find relevant. So if you're renovating, then you walk into a building, you might really notice the carpet because you are looking at carpet at the moment. So your brain keeps, almost like a Google search, keeps looking for the things that it deems that you are interested in. And it doesn't make you pay attention to things that are not significant to you. So in this way, it's more efficient. The downside is if you've been taught to mostly look out for problems, then you're unlikely to see potential and solutions. You're unlikely to see opportunity because your focal point is what could go wrong. Does that mean you're likely to let great opportunities go by? Yes, it is. And coming from someone who was an absolutely committed pessimist, you know, I grew up in a household where my mother never answered the phone, ever, the entire time we were growing up. Why? Because it could be bad news. One strange little thing she used to do is she'd go over and walk over to the phone and stand next to it whilst it rang out. And I always wondered why would you do that? I think it was like she was seeing it off. Okay, we got through that. You know, that could have been terrible. I don't remember it ever being terrible. Maybe once or twice. When my grandmother passed away, well, basically both my grandmothers passed away. Those were probably the only two times that I can remember. There was a phone call that turned out to be bad news. But it didn't stop her running the program over and over again, because it doesn't matter how often you're wrong, the program stays the same. Most of us, the things we stress out about, 96, 98% of it never, ever happens. But it doesn't stop us running another similar pattern about catastrophizing what's going to happen tomorrow. So we are consistently wrong. We consistently focus on things that don't serve us, and we don't know how to not do it. That is the value of an NLP training, is to learn how to do things differently. If you want to grow, you want new different results, you have to learn how to do things differently. And it's not just intellectual knowledge. You've got to get it here. You've got to get it, you've got to know it here. A lot of people know stuff up here, but it's just dinner party conversation. You know, a lot of NLP can be taught that way. You know, there are people in other schools, I'd say their students could out-talk me around the history of NLP and, you know, the development phases of NLP and all. Here's the truth of it. I don't care. I want to be able to do things with it. I want my students to be able to report to me. I had a WhatsApp message today where a fairly new graduate of the practitioner helped someone, and he sent her not a testimonial, but a comment saying that she helped him in 20 minutes more than he's ever been helped by professionals for the last 20 years. That's ridiculous. But I said, that's what this is about. That's why we do this, is we can make a difference while we're having a cup of coffee. So what's important here is to recognize that you can't see what you don't recognize. Your brain only searches for things that make you right. It's called a confirmation bias. So if you believe that relationships don't work because you've been hurt before, if you believe they don't work, you don't notice happy couples. You walk through a shopping mall and the only couple you pay attention to will be the couple that are fighting. And then you'll say, see, that's exactly what I'm talking about, right there. That's exactly why I'm not doing this. That's why I'm not going anywhere near that. And your brain gets very pleased with itself that it picked up on the information available. But what it doesn't pick up is that it ignored 2,000 couples walking around that same shopping mall an hour before and an hour after that event that were fine. You skew the information as it comes in because everything gets filtered through your very individual filtering system. So what should an effective NLP be able to do? Help you implement successful strategies. So really understand your strengths and build on them to overcome weaknesses for you. Communicate with precision and effectiveness. Enhance personal and professional performance. There's a lot of corporate training that has smatterings of NLP in it. Unfortunately, a lot of the time, not quite enough to make it really solid, but it's in there. Open up career opportunities for you. NLP is a fast track to a new career. Advanced negotiation skills, strategic coaching and facilitation skills, conflict management. One thing I'd say to you is, if you struggle to set boundaries, it probably isn't because you don't love yourself enough. It's because you don't have decent conflict management skills. If you can't defend a boundary, then there's no point setting one up. And at a young conscious level, you know that. Interpersonal skills and emotional intelligence and the psychology of influence and persuasion. Most of this is heavily influenced by NLP. And understanding various personality types and facial cues. So the way people process information, their listening style, their learning style, so you can get your message heard more effectively. So what's really holding you back? I promised you I would show you what is the very unconscious pattern that we all run to one degree or other, but some people run it more, it's more of a default for them. And it's the underpinning to all your decision making. So let's look at this. I have to show it to you as video because I obviously can't demonstrate here. So what are the obstacles? What gets in our way? Let me demonstrate something for you. So if we put psychology aside for a moment, there's a key driver to all our decision making and all of our behavior. We either move towards pleasure, Deb represents pleasure, or we move away from pain, and Christine represents pain. Sorry, Christine. So here in the middle, I'm in my comfort zone. I'm neither elated or upset. This is where most of the time we spend most of our time. So let me give you a simple financial example. Let's say this comfort zone is I have $5,000 in the bank. And then I total my car. So I need to buy a new car. And now I'm down to $2,000 or $1,000. And the pressure is on this side to pull me back that way. I'm getting close to what I don't want, which is broke. And then I realize there's some other bills I have to pay. I get hit by a few other financial concerns. I'm down to $500 in the bank. Now, what do most people do here? They panic. They panic and they take it seriously, and then they start to find ways of getting themselves back to where they're comfortable. So they might stop going out, really cut back their spending, or they might try and get some extra work, some overtime, something, and they start to move away from what they don't want. And at some point, they're going to get back to where they thought they belonged, and that's back to $5,000. It might take me 6 months, but I'll get back here. But here's the other thing, it works like a thermostat. Let's say I haven't been out in 6 months. I go to the RSL club, I put money in a poker machine, and I win $3,000. Now, where's the pressure? Unconscious to me, I'm going to pull myself back to where I believe myself to be. I'm a $5,000 in the bank guy. What do most people do when they have a windfall? They spend it. Unconsciously, they pull themselves back to what they believe to be true. Does this mean that this belief structure is crucial to your success in life? Absolutely. What about something like procrastination? You've heard of people who procrastinate. What is that really about?
It's about avoidance. So this is avoidant strategy or motivational strategy. And this is a proactive motivational strategy. I either move towards what I want, which is goal orientation, or I move away from what I don't want. So ultimately, what is procrastination? Well, I don't take action today because I've got a whole week to hand it in. Then days go by, I'm not really motivated yet, but I eventually get to a point where I've got to hand it in this afternoon and I haven't taken action. Now the agitation of not doing it is worse than the agitation of doing it, and I take an action. I work, I might pull an all-nighter, and I eventually get it done, I hand it in, and I can then say to myself, I think it'll work better under stress. But I'm putting myself in a stressful situation consistently. Why? Because the insidious thing about an avoidant coping strategy is that I have to have agitation to move. I don't move when I'm comfortable. So I have to be right here, face up against the wall, avoiding what I most don't want. This is about avoidance of consequence. So I don't take an action until I feel agitated enough. I use the agitation to make me move. That means I have to constantly allow myself to drift back into this space for me to take the action. I can't get myself going any other way. If you're running this, then you're running an avoidant motivational style. And you'll struggle for the rest of your life, unless you make a change to it, to get things done consistently. One of the points of coaching is that you set up goals and you move towards what you want. One of the great benefits of becoming a coach or being coached is that you move towards what you want rather than avoiding what you don't want, which is consequence. If you are a parent, if your motivational style is avoidance, then you predominantly motivate your child with discipline. If you don't take action, if you don't clean up your room, this will be the consequence. This is discipline. This is inspiration. How often do you inspire your child to do something? How often do you lead by being the model of what effective people do? If all you do is this, you are installing this avoidance into your children. All well-intentioned, it's probably what you learned, but ultimately this is not good for them because no one is highly successful just avoiding consequence. Why? Because I take a lot of action here because there's a clear and present danger. But once I start getting here, my motivation's going to wane because I'm not as close to my motivational point. And when I get back here, I'm going to roll back in here. All my action is going to be taken all the way over there. I'm going to be doing a lot less when I get here. If you don't know you're doing this, this is costing you tens of thousands of dollars a year. Why? Because as you create agitation here, the other thing you're probably going to have to do is run compensatory behavior. It might be retail therapy. You might drink more than you should. You might do drugs. You might do cigarettes. I don't know. You might eat and binge more. I don't know. But there's all sorts of ways this costs you. Also, elements like stress and agitation and annoyance and frustration and irritability are all part of this process. They're not part of this process. They're not part of what can I do to make my life better? What can I do to achieve that outcome? I move towards what I want. I say to myself, I want that in my life rather than I don't want that. And by the way, because you process visually, there's no word for don't. There's no visualization for it. So if I say, don't think of a blue tree, what do? You have to think of a blue tree and then try to pull back from it. If I say, I don't want that type of person in my life, sorry, Christine, I don't want that type of person in my life, then I'm going to go and find another person like that because that's my only reference point. There's no reference point for don't. So the language of this is pessimism, this is optimism. Some people say they're realists. No, a pessimist is not a realist. At the end of the day, you're projecting into the future, either way you go. But here's a thought for you. Optimists live longer, they're healthier, they're more affluent, they recover better from injury because they're not catastrophizing everything every single day. They're not putting themselves under that kind of pressure. They're looking for what is possible. They're looking for what is likely to happen. They're looking for possibilities. So ultimately, we have to make a new choice. NLP training is about helping you turn this boat around and do a lot more of this.
Are there times when that's a valid position? Yeah, you need to do the risk assessment, but don't you have to do it 47 times? Once will do. Now we look at, what could I do here? Where is my power? If I were to do it, how would I do it? That's what NLP training is all about. This will change your life. When you become aware of it and you know how to have strategies, processes and frameworks to change it. So hopefully that demonstration explains something for you. Ultimately, every one of us runs these patterns. The starting point is to be aware of them. And to be aware of them allows you to decide to change whatever isn't working for you. Keep what is useful. Let's get rid of what isn't. Because at the end of the day, you're not a particular person. You're not a particular personality. You don't have to live in accordance with what your conditioning has been. You get to choose on a day-to-day basis who you will be and how you will be in the world.
So this is only one of several drivers, but it's a very big one. You either move towards what you want or away from what you don't want. And if you lean towards pessimism, if you struggle with anxiety or stress, then you probably spend a fair bit of time focusing on what the consequence will be if you don't do something. Now, no one only does one way or the other, right? It just doesn't work that way. But you probably have a default. More than 50% of the population are mildly pessimistic. As a result, they're never going to achieve highly. They could get a decent job and just be comfortable. They can certainly do that. But they're not going to take risks. They're not going to create their own businesses. They're going to struggle to go out and truly explore the world, to live life the way that someone who's more optimistic will. In my own life, my sister passed away last year at 54 from pancreatic cancer. And she, like me, we're both conditioned the same way, was such a pessimist. She had all these opportunities afforded to her and she just didn't take any of them. And it wasn't until she realized her life was over that, because no one survives pancreatic cancer. It's 100% kill rate. It wasn't until then that she realized that she'd lived small for way too long. And that was an awful moment when she said that to me, that she'd pretty well wasted her life. And you don't want to wait until you know you don't have one before you decide to do something about it. Don't wait for the world to force you to make a decision. You can make it now. That's what I'd say to you. So maybe you'd like to see NLP in action. Who amongst you, maybe just put up, I know you have the little symbols, you can put up a hand or put me in the chat and we'll make a choice. But someone who could dredge up, like you could really feel quite anxious right now. Who can do that? I don't mean you were anxious, but you can't quite muster it now. No, I need you to be able to do it right now. I need to interrupt something for you. Who's got something where maybe you really are quite anxious right now? That would be great. I mean, not great for you, obviously, but great for me. Who can we choose, Amy?
There's quite a few, so maybe...
Something told me Rebecca. Rebecca.
There was a Rebecca that put her hand up, but now there's a Renee.
Okay.
Renee, are you happy to do it? And then I'm just going to make her a panelist for you so that you can see her.
Yeah, we have to make you a panelist before we can see you.
Okay.
Thank you, Nadine.
And just unmute yourself, Renee.
You can unmute yourself, Renee. Well, that just looks like a photo. Renee, have you got your camera on? And can you unmute? That didn't seem to go very well. You still there, Renee?
Try again. She should be there.
Okay. Looks like she's coming back.
You just need to turn your camera on and unmute your microphone, Renee.
Maybe we could try another example, someone else. Looks like Renee's having trouble. Oh no.
You've got it there now.
You got it there? Hey Renee, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, you're walking around the room. Are you able to settle somewhere?
Yes. Okay, is that better?
That's better. So let me pin you and make you larger so I can see. And I think I can stop the share. And then I will share this. Can people now see you, Renee? Amy, can you now see Renee?
Yeah.
On the screen, large?
I can sign in gallery view 1 second.
You share.
I just need to pin her video and I can do that. So if anyone wants to pin her video to see that, then that's fine.
Okay. Okay. So Renee, do you do stress pretty well?
Oh, extremely well. I do it that well. I do it that well. I spent 10 months in hospital last year.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, so
All right.
I do it very well.
Well, it's good to be good at stuff. That sounds like, that's like Olympic standard.
It is. Yeah, I don't do anything by halves. I make sure I do them the whole way.
Good. Bit of dichotomous thinking to go with your, would you like dichotomous thinking with your stress? Excellent.
Yes,
okay.
Thank you.
So I don't want to know what it is, but can you remember a time when you're really stressed out about something, maybe recently, and go back and activate that and give me a rating out of 10 for how strong it is? How strong your
it's a 10.
You're at a 10 already?
100.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's break it down. Let's look at how you're doing it, because from our perspective, there is no such thing as stress. Right? There is no such thing as stress or anxiety or addiction or depression or any of these things. They're not things. They are verbs. You have to do stress to yourself. So, so people saying they can't see you. Well, sorry, I'll just keep going. But hopefully, I'll stop the share. Share.
Is that something on my end that I should be doing?
I think it's something we're doing. Okay, you can see now. Okay, that's good. So, stress, anxiety, all these things, all these emotional states don't exist in the real world. You have to do it to yourself. So really go back and be there. You said you could get up to 10 pretty quickly, so you're obviously pretty skilled at this. So go into it and really just drop into it. You don't have to look at me, just drop into it any way you choose.
Yep.
Okay, so just notice how you're breathing. What's happened to your breath? Has it become shallow?
Yeah, very shallow breathing.
Where are you holding tension?
Very quick.
Yeah, quick. Where are you holding tension? You feel like you're holding tension in the chest?
In the chest, yep. And upper part of my stomach, I guess, but mainly around the chest area.
Is there anything around the back of your neck, shoulders?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm getting that.
So tense all around the back of my neck, my shoulders, my middle back. And I also carry a lot of tension sort of towards my arms, but also in the top parts of my legs as well.
Okay, well that's unusual. Okay, are you getting anything into the throat right now?
I do, yeah. Sometimes it feels as though, and I'll just explain how I feel. I don't know if other people will feel the same, but it feels as though there's like a big lump of, like, say, something stuck in my throat, like a big lump, and you're constantly trying to clear that lump from your throat without success. And it ends up getting to the point where there's that much stress and that much tension in my throat. And it's, I'm not sure if you can see me, but it's not top of the throat, it's lower part of the throat. That you end up getting, an extremely sore throat, or you have, infections in your throat, or whatever, things like that.
So it feels like it would be quite dry too. It feels like a dryish thing that's going on there.
Yeah, it's very dry. And again, like sometimes I drink that much water or fluids trying to get rid of the lump in my throat, because it literally feels as though there is a real lump in my throat, and that you're choking, basically, that you're choking. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really feeling, it's quite uncomfortable for me, just kind of matching what you're doing. Do you ever going to get things like through the forehead here, through just between, like on the inside of the eyebrows? Do you get some sort of something through there as well?
Yeah, I get a lot of headaches, just in general. But when I'm really stressed out, especially right in behind my eyes, sometimes having the light on is too bright. So there's a lot of different ways that it affects me physically.
Okay, and the voice inside your head, what is the tone of it? Not what it says, but what's the tone of it? Is it alarmist? Is it scared? Is it frustrated? What is it?
Oh, it's very scared. It's definitely not a positive voice. It's a scared voice. It's a very negative voice. The tone is very, I wouldn't call it a high-pitched, exciting tone. It's more of a lower tone.
Okay, that's what we need. And you tend to look down a lot, don't you?
Yeah.
So something that most people don't know is we don't actually run our thoughts inside our head. We actually project them into the space in front of us, almost like a pigeonhole system. And below the horizon is thinking and feeling. You can't really go into feelings above the horizon. Above the horizon is kind of like just the visualization space. But to go into emotion, you have to go below the horizon. So just, access this feeling and notice where your eyes start going. Notice how your eyes just suddenly dropped. Yeah. I'm starting to feel something in the pit of my stomach too now. Is that you? Am I making that up?
No, that's probably me.
Yeah, it's really, it's becoming uncomfortable. We need to interrupt this if it's okay with you. Yeah?
Yeah, that's fine.
Because the other thing is your posture's quite crumpled. Do you ever have back problems, shoulder blade, back and neck? Yeah, I think right behind the back of the skull. I'm getting something there too now. Yeah? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So
and it's actually really hard. It's really hard for me to actually, with where I'm looking, so you're looking down.
Yeah.
To actually look above the horizon is actually quite difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to have a lot of chiropractic work when I first stopped doing anxiety because I just couldn't straighten up. But I'm going to ask you to do it now. So run the thought, get yourself back to 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10, right? Right. So get the thought first, go into it, let yourself go right into the feeling, and then straighten up. Straight right up, lift your gaze above the horizon. And now take that same voice, don't change what you're saying, but give it a silly chipmunk accent. Keep saying the same thing though.
Yep.
Or if you want, you could do it with a broad Billy Connolly Scottish accent as the other option, or some silly French accent. Any way you want to do it, huh? Mon ami. Okay. What happens to the intensity, the feeling when you do that?
Well, look, I'm smiling.
Yeah,
it's like a bit of a weight's been lifted, I guess you could say. Yeah. Have a little giggle to yourself.
Yeah. So here's the question.
It's very different. It's very different.
Very different, isn't it? Okay.
Very different, yeah.
Now, let me ask you another question. Now, try to feel anxious about anything. Now, feel free to think about anything that normally makes you anxious. But try to access it now and notice what's different. You don't have to stay upright. Just do it any way you would normally want to do it.
Yeah.
What are you noticing?
Yeah.
It's harder, isn't it?
I'm noticing first, yeah. But if you think of something different, something that stresses you out, like something different again, but you think about it in, for example, that voice that you just said, it doesn't seem as though it's as bad as what it is when you were thinking about it with that negative voice inside of your head.
Yeah. So now, don't even bother with the chipmunk voice. Just try to access those other negative feelings now and notice what happens. What happens?
Well, I'm not so tense. You're not. Straight up, I notice that I'm not so tense.
Because you're sufficiently self-aware that your brain has just learned something. There is a massive difference between something that ambushes you, that is something that's foreign, that affects you, and you doing it to yourself. Once you have a realization that anxiety can't operate, stress can't operate without you. If you don't participate in it, it doesn't exist. So your brain has just kind of got a little alert of, wait on, have we been doing that to ourselves? Could we maybe choose not to? Is kind of what's going on. Because you spent 10 months in hospital. We've just diffused it in 30 seconds. Now, I'm not saying this is the only thing you can do. I'm not saying this is it, but I'm highlighting something to you. In that 10 months in hospital, did they once say you were doing it to yourself?
No. Never. No, they didn't. No. And I also noticed just now as well.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, just with that different style of thinking, even though it was only the second time that I've done it, there's the more, like the negative thinking, you have more negative thinking after that and more after that and more after that. Practicing just now what you've taught me, I found that it wasn't a flow-on effect. And when those flow-on messages or those flow-on thoughts came through to me, they were extinguished. And I believe that is why I don't feel so tense, and things don't seem to be as bad as what you imagine that they are when you're having those negative thoughts.
Here's the thing, stress is only a response to your own imagination. The moment you're 3 seconds into the future, you're making shit up. So the more, I mean, what I'm saying to you, Renee, is you're a very creative individual, clearly. But we could maybe stop running that catastrophe and recognize it for what it is. You don't quite know what's going to happen. That doesn't mean it's going to be bad. It just means it's unknown. So how do you feel about that? How do you feel about this little insight you've just got?
Oh, look, I feel, to tell you the truth, one word that comes to my mind is excited.
Good, and you should be excited about your life.
Excited.
I want to free you I mean, it frees everyone. You know, and it's so simple, but it comes back to, coming back to the theory behind it is you run it, you're in charge. It's an unconscious pattern that you've learnt along the way. And because it was so unconscious, you didn't know you're doing it to yourself, but no one else can run it for you. No one else can make you anxious. People say to me, oh, it's my mother's, my controlling mother, that's why I'm anxious. And I'll pick up my phone and say, well, where do I call her? There's no point talking to you, clearly, it's all her fault. And they have that realization of, oh yeah, that can't work because she's not inside of me. She's not deciding it. Well done, Renee.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Unpin you and let you go. Where are you from, Renee? You in? Where are you from? What part?
I'm from Newcastle, Australia.
Okay, good.
Yep, about 2 hours north of Sydney.
Not in lockdown is where I was kind of going.
No, not in lockdown here at all. No, we're going pretty well over here.
Oh, you're sounding a bit positive.
Oh, wow. That's a change, isn't it?
Yeah. What's going on there?
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. So let me share again. Hopefully that's right. So what's the point of all this? The point is you're in control of way more than you think you do. You're in control of so much more than 99% of the population ever think you would be. And whilst you're not in control, you don't get to decide what happens. So that's why I say everyone needs to know, because when you know NLP, you know you. If you are running the most sophisticated structure in the known universe, wouldn't it be great if you could work out how to use the damn thing? Be like having a Lamborghini and not knowing how to get it out of first gear. So ultimately, to me, NLP is the most important training you will ever undertake. But you do have to go with an NLP training that's effective. There are no barriers to entry. Anyone can set up an NLP school. It's a completely unregulated field, and one where there's a lot of, shall we say, creative marketing. So you can learn NLP and it'll be relatively ineffective, or you can learn NLP and it will absolutely change your life and give you opportunities that you never thought were possible. That's the dichotomy. So why would you do it with us and go with our particular branch of NLP? I want to do like 7 reasons, but as I laid them out today, they end up being 15. So I'll just go through it quicker. You get to join a community of like-minded people. We have forums. You get to stay part of the community. You keep in contact. We have, right now, I did a screenshot today, 145 5-star reviews and 1 4-star review, but even that guy is looking to work with us. So if you read his 4-star, it's still exceptional. So people like you have talked about their experience. We have university professors, Dr. William Herfel, philosophy of science lecturer. He said, as I sat through the NLP practitioner course, I was struck by how much it related to Nobel Prize winning researcher Daniel Kahneman, his work in cognitive sciences. This is an exceptionally effective, well-taught, evidence-based methodology that is so content-rich that it would take me at least 2 semesters to cover it. You want to do it in 7 days. The other thing that is true for us and not other schools, because I was trained by the direct students of Erickson, his direct students, I am 2 degrees away from the great man. All these people are world-renowned. They have been trained by all of them. In fact, Robert Dilts as well. I've probably spent 30 hours with Robert Dilts over the years. I just didn't put it in because I haven't got an actual qualification. It's been more ad hoc. But I'm 2 degrees of separation. If it's important to you, if it's something you want to have as part of your CV, then you are technically 3 degrees of separation. If you do the NLP, you do the hypnosis with us, you are 3 degrees of separation. That also is one of the key reasons why our training is different. There's another piece here as well, and it comes back to my training. I've created something called the Gordian Pillars. Some of you will be familiar with the story of the Gordian knot. Anxiety is a process. I've just kind of pointed out to you. But your cognition is predictable. You have to do certain things to be anxious. So this is the pillar system we use. So I know before I meet you, if you tell me, or I get an intake form or something that says that you're anxious, I already know how you do that. You tend to make global statements. That's the second pillar to the left. Global statements like, I'm an anxious person, or everything's going pear-shaped, and there's no qualification to it. You have an internal focus. You are focusing on your own imagination. The real world is nowhere near as scary as the world inside your head most of the time. And you believe in that imagination. When you imagine the meeting going pear-shaped and your boss, tearing strips off you for the way you presented, you can imagine it as if it was actually happening. Your mind is a wonderful tool of creation. You can imagine his voice, her voice, you imagine the room, you imagine the environment, everything, and none of it's happened. But you have a physical reaction to your own imagination. It's important that you understand that virtually every problem you have is a response to your own imagination. You have something called ineffective compartmentalization skills. That means you don't know how to park a thought. You don't know how to control the busy mind. That is a skill to learn. There's also something called an intolerance for ambiguity. That means you don't handle uncertainty very well. And the reason why you don't handle uncertainty very well is because you always assume it's going to be bad. The truth is, uncertainty in the future is just uncertainty. Good things will happen and bad things will happen, and the vast majority of it will be neither one, it'll be just neutral. Then you go over to the left, you must run an avoidant coping style in order to be stressed. That is to say, you don't tackle the problem, you deal with the feelings of the problem. So you're in conflict with your manager at work. You don't say to them, hey, look, can we sit down and talk about this? This communication style is not working very well. You don't do that. You go home and you drink. You go home and you hook up with your 2 best friends, Ben and Jerry, and you down a whole bucket of ice cream, and then you feel bad about yourself. And all the while, the problem at work is not changing. You're only looking to deal with the discomfort you have about the work situation. And the final pillar on the extreme right is future orientation. You have a negative expectancy of the world. When you look into the future, you imagine it going pear-shaped. If you have a positive expectancy, that's called creativity. That's called creating a vision for the future. So I know, this is not toward the practitioner level, but the master practitioner level, I have a set of these pillars for everything that grieves people. That means when I'm coaching them, I just know I can go after 1 or 2 of these and I can break down their thinking very, very quickly. This will be coming out in a book very soon. So what do people come for? To build confidence, minimize anxiety, and things like self-sabotage. All these things can be easily dealt with when you know what they really are. You might choose to become a coach. With our practitioner certification, you get 3 different certificates. You get an NLP practitioner, an EQ1 certificate, and a coaching certificate level 1. So we run full diploma courses in NLP. The NLP practitioner is the first module of the Diploma of NLP and Strategic Coaching. It's also the first module of the the Diploma of NLP Leadership and Coaching. So you can go down both of those paths. There's a really difference of one major course. We have different courses, but you put them together, you get a diploma in addition to the other qualifications. You can become a force for good. And I think we really need that now. 86% of Australians are disengaged in their jobs. This is pre-COVID, yeah? According to a Gallup poll. 45% of Australians will suffer from mental illness during their lives, according to the Black Dog Institute. 20% of Australians experience a mental disorder in just the past year. That's obviously on the increase right now. Melbourne, of course, is really struggling with the extra lockdown. And this one disturbs me greatly. 350 young people between 15 and 24 will take their own life each and every year. Why? Because they can't work out how to not listen to a thought or a feeling that's not serving them. They don't know how to run their own mind. And if you're a parent and you don't know how to do it either, then how do you help them? You can't. You know, I've seen so many parents who are just clueless and they don't know what to do and they're not getting good help. And in some cases, they found me once after it was too late. It's horrendous. You know, people, the only complaint I ever hear, not complaint, but the only regret I hear from people is I wish I knew this earlier. And one time someone said, I wish I knew this before my daughter committed suicide. I'm like, oh, Jesus, that must have been horrendous. So it's a skill set we all need. Here's another element that people don't know about, and this is the next big wave that's going to affect this country. You can look it up. It's called the CEDAR Report, 2015. It states that 5 million Australian jobs will be gone by 2025, either sent offshore or lost to artificial intelligence. And one of the factors was if you could work remotely, then by definition, then you can be replaced by China or India. And now, of course, everyone's working remotely just about. So these are professional jobs that are going. They're not working class jobs. You still have to, you know, the guy who's got to clean up the food court, he's still there. These are professional jobs. Now, I don't know if yours is one of them. If you want to know, go to this website, willrobotstakemyjob.com. As a basic rule of thumb, if empathy and working with people is the key component, like nursing, you're relatively safe. What I do, coaching, hypnotherapy, psychologists, pretty safe. Very low chance, like 1 or 2%. But accountants, it's like 94% chance that you won't have a job unless you morph into some sort of financial coaching or something else. And I'm told by someone in the group last week that they've known this for 20 years and they've been trying to encourage people to diversify for 20 years and they haven't done very well with that, apparently. So it depends on your job. But there's never been a better time in history to decide to develop a second string or a side business or alternatives. Learn how to negotiate. I will give you one phrase that has saved me $32,000 over the years and got me on a plane out of New York when everyone else on the plane I was on were told they had to wait 3-4 days before they could fly. I was the only one who got out of New York, and I had to work a way of negotiating something very different. It was a real left field thing that we eventually did, but it came back to me delivering this phrase within the right context. Every technique, you got to know when to use it as well, but I'll teach it to you. You know, and I had a client, not a client, I had a student just a month or so after she did the course, She used this technique. She got it, obviously got it right. She sent me a text saying, hey, that really worked. Almost like surprised. I'm like, yeah, of course it is. She said, yeah, but I didn't think it worked for me. I can believe it worked for you, but it worked for me first time. She saved herself like $1,000. You can become a key person of influence. You know, you learn how to lead. You learn how to manage people, how to read and predict behavior and build respect, right? What I notice is a lot of people, they end up being people that others see as wise or insightful or inspirational because they know this stuff. So there's all sorts of possibilities for you. I don't know where you're in your life, of course, but possibilities. And you get to take control of things like your critical, busy, angry voice. We have something like 14 different techniques you'll learn. Out of that 14, there's about 4 or 5 that we are the only ones that teach it, to my knowledge. You might ask, well, why is that? Well, in some cases, I made it up. In other cases, I don't really know why they don't know it, especially the one for the critical voice. I think it's crucial, and my students tell me that when they meet other people who've trained elsewhere, they don't even believe it's possible. Well, it's standard for us. The other thing is there's no massive upsells. This is another thing I get complaints from other schools or other students from other schools, is that, you know, do you want fries with that? There's sometimes 20% of your course time is upselling you to another course. Now, we will explain what's in the masters, and we'll take about 20 minutes to do that. But apart from that, the rest of the course is your time. You've paid to be there. It's not my time to just keep loading you up with more opportunities to buy something. That's not the purpose of the training. And I wish it wasn't for others. If I were you, if anyone you're considering, you should ask these questions and get them to write down a guarantee that the course will be for your learning, and any more than about 5% of the time should not be any upsells. I can tell you now, some courses are 20%, some are 25% of the entire course is upsell. So once they get you in there, they've got a captive audience and they're pushing to sell something else. Just be mindful of that. And the other thing is, I didn't even know whether to bring this up or not, but you can know you're safe with us. And what I mean by that, I mean, because I'm an experienced clinician, it doesn't really matter what might come up for you. And you never know what might come up, but you know, sometimes people don't, most of the time, people don't come up with really big stuff. But no matter what, if you get triggered by something, I can manage it. We'll stay back at the end of the day, and it'll probably take me about 10 minutes to knock it out. In fact, that's the best time to hit it, is when it's right in your face. Most of the time, people can't do that because they're not clinicians. They don't have the experience of working with people. I've worked with over 4,000 people one-on-one. So it's not hard for me to manage that. The other thing, so it's you personally safe within the realm. And the other element of that is whoever you choose as NLP practitioner trainer is technically going to mess with your head. They're going to seek to put things in there. And if they're not really experienced, they don't really know what they're doing, there's a danger to that. So you really want to find out the experience of the trainer. You want to find out also, have they ever been sued or taken to the ACCC or the HCCC? The ACCC is the consumer, Australian consumer watchdog. Ask them, have they ever been taken to the ACCC and have they lost? Now, you might guess from the fact I'm asking the question that I kind of know the answer to that. You can ask us. We'll put it in writing. We've never been taken to the ACCC. We've never lost a case there. No, we've never been. So that might tell you something about who you're working with. I'm sorry to bring it up, but I mean, ultimately, I know this is what can happen. Another piece, and the last piece is, most of you aren't going to do it after the practitioner, but those of you who want to turn this into a career, the thing that we found over the years that was holding people back, even though they learned to become a coach or a therapist or a trainer or whatever they want to be, was they just didn't know how to market themselves. So fairly recently, we just decided, okay, we're going to take some people and we're going to put you online and we're going to set you up for your own business. You know, here's a photograph, or it's actually a movie of, we make movies actually here in the studio. I've got different color sheeting behind here. We can create a movie for you of you explaining what you do. So we can set you up. We can actually get you online and get you started. Basically, we're going to look after you for the first 90 days. So that's an added extra, obviously, but we will do that for you. If you come through all the training, then we will do that for you. If you ask, we're happy for you to go and do it somewhere else. It's not our main business, but we just want to make sure you are getting an outcome. We want you to be effective. We want you to be successful. And so this is what we decide to do. So you can do that as well. This is a website that we made for one of our hypnotherapists. Again, you can look these things up. So what are your options? We run a 7-day intensive in a few weeks. It will be live broadcast. 21st to the 27th of October. If there's an opportunity, if you're sitting down here, if you're still in lockdown, we've had a lot of people from Melbourne in our courses recently because they're using the opportunity. They can't go out, they might as well learn something new. A second option would be in January, again, 7-day intensive, and that's a face-to-face at Sydney University in Sydney. And the third is modular, 4 days and then 3 days of a few weekends, and that's a live broadcast. We are going to continue the live broadcast even when everything goes back to normal, because we found people actually like it. People were reluctant originally, but now they're actually quite liking it. And, you know, in the same room as you. On the weekend, we just had a group. We had people from Dubai, Singapore, all over the country, New Zealand. And so that wouldn't normally happen when we're doing something locally, not quite the same range of people. And that can be great for you as a group too. So these are the options we've got coming up. So obviously you want to know what your investment is. If you're here to do this, what's the cost? Now, if you look around, if you've been looking around, you'd know this is pretty normal. 3980, it's been 3980, or around about $4,000 for most of the schools for probably a decade now. So it's not gone up. But what we're doing for the live broadcast is we're taking basically $1,500 off it. Obviously, we don't have the cost of venues. We're giving you the opportunity, and we've got to help out too. We've got to do what we can to help you get to a new space. The other thing is you get to start now because you also get full course audio and video. So we will record the course that we do, but we've already pre-recorded other courses so you could start now. Because NLP, it's hard to take it all aboard in one go. I don't think any good NLP training can be really taken on board in one shot. You're going to keep listening and keep finding new stuff constantly. So we're the only school that I know of that gives you full course video and full course audio of a pre-recorded course and then your particular course. So all that adds up to about another $2,000 to $3,000 worth of stuff. There are limited seats available, of course. We can't have 80 people on the online course. So you know, we've got to break you into different groups, break you into so you can do exercises. I've still got to be able to get through all those groups and check in on how you're doing. So under $2,500. I haven't been checking in recent times, but my understanding is that's about as cheap as you can go. I personally think the key is value. You know, if this has worked, you know, if this has worked for you the way I said it would, 6 months from now, a year from now, you've got to ask yourself, would it be worth the price you paid? And I don't know anyone who's been through our training that didn't say yes. So talk to us. That's the key. If you want us to talk to you, please just let us know. Just put a Y in the chat. Or if you want more information, just put more information in the chat, and then we know to start to send something to you. You know, obviously we want to mostly talk to the people who are keenest. And yes, this is all Eastern Standard Time. We start at 1 in the afternoon. We go through at 8 o'clock at night. So you still get part of your day to do other things. Yeah. Have I answered your questions? Are there other questions that you would like me to answer? So again, if you just want more, if you want more information, put a Y into the chat and we'll get to you. If not now, in the coming days. Yes, we can send that to you. Yes, yes. Yes, Renee, I'm pleased to hear that you might be interested. Yes, I think it will be a pivot point in your life. Okay, talk about the diploma. The diploma is the NLP practitioner, the NLP master practitioner, and we have a unique thing called a strategic coaching model. And the coaching model assumes NLP knowledge. That's why those two other courses are basically prerequisites for the coaching. So all up, it's about 20 days of training to become a coach with us. And at the moment, most of it's online. Does NLP help remove mental blocks? Yes. Look, let me qualify that. It depends on what the mental block is. If you've got something physically wrong with you, maybe not, but certainly you should be able to take way more control of your thinking by the end of an NLP training. It should be fairly obvious to you what you're in charge of and what you're not. Yep. Anything else, people? Okay, lots of. Do you offer RPL? Well, RPL technically is for government accreditation. We'd have to look at that. It would depend on. Here's one of the problems. If you've already done NLP somewhere else, practitioner level, and you want to come and do our masters, what we would do is ask you to at least listen to the recordings of our practitioner, because we stopped taking people from other schools a while ago because there was two basic pathways they took. Either they sat in the masters completely flummoxed and looking very stressed out because they just didn't know most of it, or they sat there asking question after question after question because they didn't understand it and kind of interrupting the group constantly. And I realized I just can't have people coming in fresh from another school because what we teach is so different. And a lot of us assume knowledge. So we figured you probably should have learned. You obviously didn't. So if you're willing to pay a very reduced fee to get the recordings and at least watch and listen to those, then under those circumstances, we would take you on. But otherwise, we won't do it. And can we access unconscious minds? I heard from somewhere, don't access. Here's a thought for you, whoever's asked that. There is no such thing as the unconscious mind. That might be news to you, but it's a metaphor for your unconscious processes. There's no place called the unconscious mind. Right? There's things that right now, you're assessing what I'm saying. That is your conscious processing. We kind of call that the conscious mind. And then the way you're assessing air quality and digesting food, all that sort of stuff, and the way you're even taking on board my mannerisms. So if someone were to imitate me in the next day or so, you'd be able to kind of work out whether that was a reasonable impression or not. That's unconscious to you. So things are not locked in your unconscious mind because there's no such place. What happens is you often run very unconscious patterning, and your logical brain, your conscious mind, doesn't really know what you're doing and starts making up stories to explain it. Oh, it's all because of my controlling mother. And I can point out that someone else could run the same pattern and they never met their mother. So how does that work? So everything for me is about you taking responsibility for your life, because that's when you get power. When you say, my boss makes me angry, my boss ruined my weekend because he said something to me on Friday afternoon. Well, your boss is responsible for what he said, but he couldn't make you ruin your weekend if he tried. He doesn't have that power. The reason why your weekend got ruined is because you went over it again and again and again. You dwelled on it and you ruined your weekend. Your boss does not have the power to do that. So helping people take back responsibility gives them back control. And that is my ultimate aim, is giving people back way more control of their lives than they think is even viable, because we've not been taught this. We should have been, but we weren't. And if I have my way, it will be in schools. We are a government accredited training organization, so we've got the best chance. We're actually even putting NLP course competencies through the government agencies now, seeking approval to make them government accredited. So we're going to turn this into something. It's just a case of how long they'll take to let us get there, but we'll find a way. Sorry to ask, in deep sleep that mine. Well, when you're deeply asleep, your unconscious processes are running clearly. You're not aware of them. So it's really about, what are you aware of? What are you not aware of? Yeah? And so, but there isn't a separate vault that is your unconscious mind. That's what I'd say to you. You know, people say, I got something locked in my unconscious and that's why I can't do what I'm doing. No, you just don't recognize your own pattern. You know, I self-sabotage because maybe I fear success. No, you don't fear success. Nobody fears success. What you may not be able to do is keep or maintain an effort when you don't feel like it. So that's more about the fact you listen to your feelings too much. That's not an unconscious fear of success. Or maybe you worry about getting right up here and then falling from a greater height. But that's not fear of success. That's still fear of failure. So no matter what it is, I can show you that it's way less complicated than most models would tell you. You know, the strategic piece that I learned with the Milton Erickson Foundation and with others, you know, I spent $250,000 on my education. I sold the business I had and I traveled for 2 years and I just found the best I could find. And then I've distilled all that down into the course that I teach. So you're getting the value of all of that training and the cherry pick of everything that was great when you come to our training. So you're going to learn something that's going to be quite different from what 99% of the population believe to be true. And actually, to be honest, quite different from what most NLP trainers would say as well. You know, most NLP trainers in Australia would say things like, you're in charge of everything that happens in your life. So every single thing, if you get hit by a truck, the truck mounted the curb, the pavement and hit you, then they would say, you created that. And I would say that would make you a very powerful being. The irony is that the people at the top of the tree, the people like Robert Dilts, Steve Andreas, these guys who invented NLP and researched NLP, these people have been my trainers, they'd never say that. They'd never say that kind of thing. That's all come from an influence way down the pecking order. This is very different. And thankfully, I had the funds and the great privilege of learning from these guys. So yeah, you can talk to your course advisor. If you've already been talking to someone, you know, maybe arrange. Rosie's online right now. Lisa's had an accident. She's actually in hospital right now. She would be here if she could, but let us know and we'll make contact. Okay, it's now 8 o'clock. Is there anything else that you need from me? Yes, I'm sure we can, Anita. Anything else that you need from me before I close this off? All right, well, thank you so much for staying with me. Hopefully, I've conveyed my love of this topic. And please, look at doing this. As I said, no one ever regrets it. The only thing they ever regret is they wish they had done it earlier. So we have payment plans that can go 5 years now, 60-month payment plans. Again, I don't think anyone else is doing that now, but we've got it. You know, being an